Around 500 billion. 500 billion, that's still a big number when you're adding that to the debt every single year. And $17 trillion in national debt. That's what was going on in the greatest country on earth, right here in America. Now, I firmly believe, I've been in North Carolina my entire life, so I actually believe that I live in the greatest state in the greatest country on earth. You can go ahead and clap for that. But when I woke up in 2009, I looked around the state of North Carolina, and all of a sudden we recognized that we had huge deficits here in our state. Our unemployment rate had hit double digits. And when you looked around the state, 1 out of 5 children living in poverty here in the state of North Carolina. You go down to some really rural areas like Scotland County, where the unemployment rate got as high as around 18%. That's what was happening here in North Carolina. I firmly believe we live in the greatest state, the greatest country on earth. And so I said, okay, what am I going to do to be a part of what I think is going to take for a real recovery to happen, not only in the state, but in the country as a whole? And, you know, I was someone who was raised by my grandparents, thankfully. I love my grandparents to death. I would surely say I would not be the person and the man and the individual I am had it not been for my grandparents sowing just amazing seeds inside my spirit. But my grandfather was a product of the Great Depression. And anyone who was a product of the Great Depression, not one day went by where you didn't talk about the Great Depression. It just had such a psychological impact on the folks that came out of that period. And so coming up with my grandfather, he often talked about the Depression. And he triggered me to be a study of history as well. And I would go back and study periods like the 1970s when America went through incredible stagflation and slow economic growth. I looked at areas like the late 80s when we had our savings and loan crisis, and all of a sudden our economy was on the skids again. So I started to say in 2009, I said, okay, we've been here before. We've been here before. America's always been challenged. But you can't ever count America out, because America always figures out a way to come back. You know, I remember being in school in the 1980s, and our teachers started telling us that we ought to learn Japanese. They said America would no longer be a superpower. Y'all remember that? They said Japan would be the greatest country on earth. How did we respond to those criticisms? We went on in the 1990s, and through a technology revolution, we created over 20 million jobs in this country. And our private sector restored prosperity. We generated more government revenue than we ever had because the private sector was growing. And all of a sudden, all these criticisms about America just dissipated. And that was because we had a catalyst. You look back to the Depression era of the 1930s and how we came out of that era. The whole world had counted America out. But we bound together, and through World War II, we ramped up our industrial production, and we made this country a superpower. We had a catalyst. We had a catalyst. And so in 2009, I started to say, okay, what's going to be the catalyst that moves us forward this time? May not be technology. We already went through a technology boom. I went through an internet boom. Won't be real estate. We just went through a real estate boom. And certainly wasn't going to be banking in 2009 because you were letting your bank to keep the doors open. So what was going to be the catalyst? And that's when I came across energy. Energy is the catalyst that's going to help us create the jobs that we need in this country and in this state to move us forward and grow out of the situation that we're in right now. And do not let yourselves be fooled. The economy is certainly much better, not only here in the state of North Carolina, but in the entire country. It is much better. Deficits are getting better. But we are still not out the woodshed by any stretch of the imagination. We have some real structural issues in our economy related to our labor. We've got some structural issues related to our deficit and our debts. And the only way that we're going to get through this is we've got to find a major catalyst that's going to allow us to grow. And that's why I've gotten involved with energy. And that's why I'm hoping after tonight, you all are going to get involved with energy. I'm hoping you all are going to go back to your neighborhoods, your churches, your communities, and you're going to find 5 more people to get involved with energy. And then they're going to find 5 more people to get involved with energy. Because I believe this is what we're going to do to get this state and country moving forward. So let me talk a little bit. Let's get sort of in, we're going to go a little bit more in depth around energy. When I say energy, what does that really mean? Now, as I said, I'm with the North Carolina Energy Forum. I'm also with the America's Energy Forum. Now, we are a nonpartisan group. I want to say that. This is not a Democrat-Republican issue. It's not a red or it's not a red or blue issue. It's just not. It's not that kind of an issue. This is an issue about real people and real families and real pocketbooks. All right. Now, I always like to ask this question: how many people in here would you consider yourselves an energy voter? Show of hands. Are you an energy voter? All right. I should have seen every hand go up. I'll ask a couple more questions. How many people drove here tonight? All right, that's about every hand. How many people actually care about what it costs to get your car to be able to drive here tonight? All right, that's every hand, right? All right. It's been pretty hot outside. You agree? How many people care about what it costs to cool your house or cool your office? Right? Now I see some people, y'all got some big mouths of food right now. How many people like food? All right, everybody likes food. Now, if you like food, or if you care about what it costs to heat or cool your home, or if you care about what it costs to drive your car, you're an energy voter. Because energy is touching you. Energy is so pervasive throughout our entire society. It touches everything. It touches everything. And so most people aren't fully educated about how much energy really impacts them. But you are an energy voter. And you should be deeply concerned about what the cost of energy is, what the supply of energy is, and what's our policy as it relates to exploration and development of energy. And that's at the central thing of what we do through the Energy Forum. We just try to give you real facts. Because there are a lot of myths when it comes to energy exploration and production that's out there. How many people seen the movie Gasland? You ain't seen that movie? Well, you're not missing anything. I mean, there's a bunch of movies out there, like movies like Gasland, that try to threaten people or scare people as it relates to energy. So tonight we're going to talk some real facts about hydraulic fracturing. We're going to talk some real facts about offshore energy production. And then I'm going to close up by just hitting on the Energy Modernization Act that just passed here in North Carolina. And hopefully we got enough time at the end, because I know you're going to have some burning and tough questions for me, right? He already tried to ask me a tough question. I didn't even give him a presentation yet. I had to ask him to just wait a minute for me. Get the information out. All right? So how many people have actually heard of hydraulic fracturing? Show of hands. All right? How many people actually know what it is? Show of hands. All right, very good. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a quick video to sort of give you an overview of what hydraulic fracturing is, because a lot of people hear about it, but they don't always know exactly what it is, okay? And hopefully this works. Ken, you want to do it? Or, yeah, let me get out of the way. I don't want to mess with that. No, sir, we'll buy that too.
Not familiar with the TV ads of
No, I'm not. Oh, okay. I see.
All the children are going to die.
Oh, and they're running ads. Well, you let us know, we need to come help you out. We'll talk. Okay, folks, if y'all just feel.
It's kind of quiet. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the speakers to work, so.
Are you able to turn it up? And if it doesn't work, we can.
But you can talk to the pictures at least.
Is that as loud as it goes?
Right there.
Yeah.
Where's your speaker right here?
At this point, great shale reserves from the Lewis groundwater reservoir. At this point, the drill pipe and pit are removed, and a steel tube called surface casing is set inside the well. The tube stabilizes the well sides, creating a protective barrier over the well stream and any underground freshwater reservoirs. Cement is then pumped into the well through and out of the casing, displacing any remaining drilling fluids and permanently securing the casing in place. By filling the gap between the casing and well floor, the cement creates a seal, protecting well water from contamination and keeping outside materials from entering the well flow. Once the first layer of casing is in place, it is pressure tested to ensure hydrocarbons and other fluids do not seep out into the formation as they are brought to the surface. The pipe and drill bit are lowered back into the well where the drilling continues. Another layer of casing and cementing is then constructed to create a second permanent protective barrier. Multiple layers of casing and cementing are critical to safe well construction and drinking water protection. About 500 feet above the hydrocarbon-bearing shale formation, a specific downhole drilling bunker with sophisticated measuring instruments begins the angle drilling to create a horizontal path to penetrate the targeted layer of gas or oil-bearing shale. Once the desired horizontal distance is reached, the casing and cementing process continues through the entire length of the well. A perforating tool is then inserted into the well, creating holes in the shale layer, allowing hydrocarbons to enter the well stream. When the perforating tool is removed, fracturing fluid made of mostly water and sand is pumped into the well, opening tiny fractures deep into the shale. Water is removed, but the sand remains, holding the fractures open and allowing gas to travel from the shale out into the well. Pitch plugs are inserted and the fracturing process repeats across the entire length of the well. Once all the fractures are completed, the plugs are removed and gas flows to the surface. The entire drilling process takes about 2 to 3 months, but hydraulic fracturing takes only days, allowing for 20 to 40 years of energy production. Combining horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing reduces the footprint of drilling and makes it possible to produce oil and natural gas in places where previous technologies couldn't.
All right, so I don't know if everybody heard that in the back, and I apologize if it was not as loud as it needed to be, but hopefully you all got a good gist of it up here. For you folks who maybe thought you knew what it was, is that sort of what you thought it was? I mean, in terms of what hydraulic contraction is and what the process is? Just some things I want to mention, because some of the things that you'll hear if you're out talking to folks, and especially some of my environmental friends who obviously who tend to be very much in opposition of us using hydraulic fracturing. Again, in case you didn't hear it in the video, this is a 60-year-old process. This is not something that all of a sudden we just tripped up on in the last decade and started using, despite the fact that they try to make it seem like this is some new, untested technology. We've actually been doing it for 6 decades in this country, and we actually know how to do it very well. We're very good at it. So, and when you think about it, when you hear about the energy boom that's currently underway in the country, now, I don't know if you all caught it, but recently here in our country, we just surpassed Russia as the largest producer of natural gas. And we soon will surpass Saudi Arabia in 2025 as the largest producer of oil. Now, that would have been unheard of just a few years ago in this country, right? And the reason why we're able to do that is through this process that we call hydraulic fracturing. It's allowing us to get to natural gas and oil resources that we never thought we could get our hands on. We never thought we could even recover. So when you hear unconventional oil and gas recovery, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about hydraulic fracturing. And then the other thing they're talking about is slant drilling. So slant drilling is the process when you saw the well bore go down and they're using the additional drilling lines to be able to capture the resource. That's what's allowing us to be able to produce more than we've ever been able to produce before. And we're also doing it in a way where we're creating a much smaller footprint now. Now, at the end of that video, did you see the footprint after they actually created the well? You know, the footprint, when you're using hydraulic fracturing, the actual footprint for the drilling operation is about the size of this table. It's much smaller than anybody would have ever imagined. In fact, the drilling site is about 90% smaller than what it would be if you were using conventional oil and gas recovery. Okay, 90% smaller. So again, the environmental community, if it's all about protecting the environment, and it's all about balancing the needs of our economy against the environment, it would seem like this would be a process that they would favor. Because again, it's a much smaller footprint. Now the other thing you're going to hear people talk about, and they'll try to scare you on, is they'll say, oh my God, this stuff is going to impact the groundwater. Now that's what, if you ever heard of this movie Gasland, that's what this movie is about. There's an older gentleman in the movie, and he goes in the kitchen, and he turns his water faucet on, and he sets it on fire. And it just scares people to death when they see that, right? Well, let's be clear, okay? Let's be clear. There is not one single case, not one single case of hydraulic fracturing having any impact on groundwater. Not one.
That's out of a million.
And that's actually it's out of close to 2 million wells. 2 million wells completed in over 60 years, not one single case of groundwater contamination. And now, whenever I have a chance to have a conversation with my environmental friends, I always like to bring up, if you don't believe me, go talk to the Obama administration. Secretary Jewell, the current head of the Interior, would tell you that there's not one single case of hydraulic fracturing being linked to groundwater contamination. Hold on one second. Gina McCarthy, former head of the EPA, says the same thing. Now, I don't think anybody would argue that Obama is a fan of the environmental community. If his own administration is saying that there's not a single case of groundwater contamination, surely the environmentalists should listen to that. But they don't. That's not something that they listen to. Again, you notice from the video, the aquifer level actually resides at about 200 to 1,000 feet below ground. That's where groundwater typically is, okay? These operations are occurring at about 6,000 feet below ground. It's about a mile underground is where these operations are going. So it's not even nowhere near at the level where the aquifer is. It's not even in the same vicinity. All right, that's the other thing. The actual casing that they use to complete the well bore, you saw that steel casing that they talked about? That steel casing is designed to make sure that the hydraulic fracturing operation is separated from the groundwater. There's about 3 million pounds, let me say that number again, 3 million pounds of steel and cement that goes into creating these redundant layers of cases. Again, not one single case of groundwater contamination connected to hydraulic fracturing. In addition, I'll say this. The actual, what they call fracking, you'll hear a lot of people say fracking, and that's the actual stimulation of the shale underground. That's when they're pumping the chemicals in at a high pressure and causing the stimulation to occur so they can trap the resource. That process actually only lasts for about 2 to 3 days. A lot of people think that that process is ongoing. It's actually not. It's a 2 to 3 day process. Once they frack the well actually produces like a traditional well for the next 10 to 20 years. Now, you may have to go back in and refract it in 10 or 15 years, but it's not this constant stimulation that the environmental community would try to have you believe. That's not how the process works. It's not how it's done. And then another thing you'll hear about hydraulic fracturing, the other way they'll try to scare you is they'll say, oh my God, they're pumping all these chemicals underground. All these chemicals underground. What's going to happen to all these chemicals? It's going to impact you. Well, that fracking fluid that they talked about that they pump underground, let me tell you what's made up of it, all right? 99.5% of that fluid is water and sand. It's actually what you find at any beach around the country. Okay? Water and sand. There's about 0.5% in there that is actual chemicals, and that chemicals is used to reduce friction and obviously allow the process to work. All right? So again, those are just some of so I'll give Mr. White time to get that under control. You got it? All right. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to draw some of those things out because if you hear anybody talking about hydraulic fracturing, those are typically the things that you're going to hear a lot about. Those are the things they're going to try to steer you on.
Could you just
yeah. So
what chemical was that?
well, it's a makeup of chemicals. So it's sort of a cocktail of various chemicals. But what I can tell you is that many of the chemicals that you find in that 0.5% is the stuff that you find in your dish detergent, it's the stuff you find in your lipstick, it's the stuff that you find laying around your house. So it's not, and again, the environmentalists will say, oh my God, these energy companies, they don't want you to know what these chemicals are. Well, that's a lie too. You can go to fracfocus.org, I'll say it again, fracfocus.org, and you can actually learn more about the chemicals that are used in these fluids. In fact, at this website, fracfocus.org, you can actually see where drilling operations are occurring around the country. They show them on a map. Here in North Carolina, as a part of the Energy Modernization Act, the drilling companies will have to do public disclosure of what these chemicals are, despite what the fact the media tries to tell you and the environmentalists say. If you read the bill, it says in the bill, public disclosure is required, and that public disclosure will be done through fracfocus.org if you want to learn more about those chemicals. So before I move on to offshore, or before I want to hit on the Energy Modernization Act a little bit, then I'm going to conclude with offshore. But before I do that, I just shared a lot of information. So I'm going to pause. Let's do a little Q&A on hydraulic fracturing if you've got questions. Yes, ma'am.
Some people believe that fracturing influences the occurrence of earthquakes.
Oh, that's the other one. Yeah. Now, let me say this. This is a very serious issue. Okay, because if you go to states like Texas, Ohio, Colorado, Oklahoma, where there has been very heavy fracking operations, they have been seeing more seismic activity. They've been experiencing earthquakes. I think in Youngstown, Ohio, they had over 100 earthquakes in a year, something like that, all right? Very serious issue. And I think the oil and gas industry takes it very serious because you don't want any residents or any community or any neighbors to suffer any kind of loss of assets or deterioration in value or anything like that. So the oil and gas industry has been studying what you're talking about. Scientists have been studying what you're talking about. And this is what they're finding out, okay? Again, as you heard me say a moment ago, the actual fracking operation only lasts for 2 days. So it's impossible that the actual operation itself is creating the kind of seismic activity that these people are claiming. Now, the fracking operation itself does create a bit of seismic activity, but it's about -2 or -3 on the Richter scale. So you say, what is that the equivalent of? That's the equivalent of an 18-wheeler coming out down the highway. You probably barely feel it. Certainly wouldn't be like an earthquake, okay? Now, what scientists are figuring out and what may be correlated to this seismic activity that you're seeing in these states that I just mentioned are the use of what we call injection wells, all right? Injection wells. So what are injection wells? When you pump this fluid down underground and it starts to come back up, it is not something that you want to reuse. And it's not something that you want to discharge in streams or rivers. And it's certainly not something that you want to store in a lined pit, right? So what the industry does is they inject this waste underground into an injection well at about 10,000 feet below ground, all right? Now, injection wells are not anything new either. We've been using injection wells in this country for decades. There's about 150,000 injection wells in America right now. About 44,000 of those injection wells are being used by the oil and gas industry. The other injection wells are used by big manufacturers. That's how they dispose of wastewater. Now, what they're finding is when you take one of these injection wells, if you place that injection well too close to a fault line, you're injecting heavy volumes of fluid underground, you can see some migration of that water. If that water migrates into the fault lines, it'll cause stress, and that's most likely is what scientists believe is generating these earthquakes and the seismic activity that you're talking about. So how do you fix that, right? Because it's something that has to be addressed. The industry is looking at whether or not if you actually reduce the amount of the volume of water that you're pumping in underground at a time, would that reduce some of the seismic activity? That's something that's being looked at. The industry is trying to figure out if there are other ways to actually store the wastewater, but the actual federal regulators will tell you the best way to store this wastewater is in injection wells. So that's the direction that they get from their federal oversight. So they're looking at other ways, is there other ways to do this? And then they're also looking at, are there ways to better construct the wells themselves so that you don't have this kind of migration of the water into the fault system and then end up generating the kind of seismic activity that we're talking about. So that's a very long-winded answer, but you asked a really good question, and that is something that, if you jumped on Google and Google fracking, you can see some claims that fracking causes earthquakes, but it's just not true. Now, here in North Carolina, there will not be any use of injection wells. The geology of North Carolina is not in a way where injection wells would be best used here in our state. So the wastewater that we'll produce here in North Carolina will actually just get trucked to other injection wells in other states, but it won't actually be stored here in North Carolina.
Well, that was what my next question, my question was going to be, because there was a rumor that that the wastewater will be stored in eastern North Carolina. Now, our terrain is not conducive to fracking, because I assume you have to have bedrock or some sort of hard substance. We don't have that down here.
Yeah.
But it was spread around that the chemicals would be stored down here.
There were some rumors, and I remember when some of that was coming out, but yeah, that's just completely unfounded. I mean, again, what scientists or what the industry discovered was that the geology in North Carolina in general just didn't work for this kind of storage. And so there won't be any use of injection wells in North Carolina. And again, I'm not saying that the use of injection wells is unsafe, actually. Again, I'll reiterate, there's 150,000 of them in the country. I mean, it's something that we've been doing for a very long time. I think the recent seismic activity that we've been seeing is where we've just been placing injection wells in the wrong location. And part of that issue is we don't have really good technology of what the subsurface looks like underground. So it's very difficult at times for us to determine where these hidden fault lines and these hidden fractures are. But if we could get better images, that's another thing that the industry is looking at. If you could get better imaging of the subsurface, you could actually know where these lines are, and you could better place the injection wells, which would also reduce the kind of seismic activity that you were just talking about. Like in Youngstown, Ohio, where they had that 100+ earthquakes in that one year, it was all located around one injection well. There's 200 injection wells in Ohio, but they didn't have seismic activity at the other 199. It was at one of them. So again, it makes sense that these things are just being placed in the wrong area. Any other questions there? Or? No? All right. All right. So, do you have any specific questions? I mean, how familiar are you?
Well,
yes, sir.
One of the things that in the legislature, that fracking is the F word, and we try not to use it when we're corresponding with folks, but of course they'll force you back into the conversation.
Yeah.
What fracking, for all intents and purposes, the word, I mean, is poison, if you will, to the general public. We need to get beyond that, of course. Everybody seems to. Well, I'll give you an example. They did some polling, and they asked how many folks in this poll were in favor of fracking, and it was like 10% were in favor and 90% were opposed.
Yeah.
Now, when you ask the question in a different way and said, how many folks are interested in exploring natural gas in North Carolina?
That's right.
90% were in favor and 10% opposed.
That's
so,
right.
How do we?
Well, and that's a part of
that's part
of what I'm trying to do. Is that 5 years ago, the industry woke up and realized that the environmental community was extremely vocal about this issue, and was shaping the message by getting out here and spreading a lot of myths and scare tactics and so forth. So what we've been trying to do is to get out and make sure people have the right kind of education, so when they do hear the word fracking, they actually know what it is, so that they're not intimidated by it, or they don't think it's something that's negative or bad for them. So, I mean, obviously, we've been out here for years trying to make sure people are educated. We certainly haven't gotten to everybody, but you're exactly right. I mean, it's been made more political than about the economic realities. And it's not even just the economic realities from the standpoint of job creation. You know, we've got some serious issues here in our state. We've got some transportation issues. We've got education issues. I mean, we just went through this long fight about how to pay our teachers the right kind of money. I mean, we've got big issues in this state that we need to address. And quite frankly, nothing's going to fix them other than some revenue and money. And the way you generate revenue, the private sector has to be operating the right way. It has to be growing. And so that, I mean, it's not even just about the jobs piece, which is just one part of it. It's also about making sure we generate the kind of revenue we need from the state so that we can support these services. But then it's also about national defense. I mean, look at what this is doing for our country. We are becoming more and more secure, energy secure. Now, I'm somebody that doesn't believe we'll ever actually get to energy independence. I don't believe that, because we operate in this global society, so it's very difficult to do that. But I do think we can reach energy security, and that's something that's happening right now. And then you look at what's happening over in the Middle East, you look at what's happening in Russia, and the fact that we are a more energy secure country, I mean, that's a national defense issue. So it just transcends just the jobs piece.
Well, can this conceivably bring the cost of energy down? And I ask that with this caveat. There's a lot of folks that feel as though that the price may not be dramatically impacted in terms of coming down because of the worldwide market. I mean, we're going to be actually exporting more of this out of here based on need and price and, market factors around the world.
Sure.
How do you counter that? I mean, so I guess you just did. You said we'll never be fully
Well,
energy independent.
No, we won't. And but you said the question was, would it conceivably come down? The price of energy has already come down. It very much so. But the natural gas is having a huge impact on what you pay to light these buildings down. Because what these companies like Duke Energy are realizing is that we'd rather use natural gas to produce electricity, and it's bringing the cost of energy down. Right now, what's happened for families here in America, they've seen their energy costs come down somewhere around $3,500 on an annual basis. We believe that'll be another $3,500 over the next several years, all right? That's a tax cut for a lot of people. So it's already starting to happen, and if we can make sure we don't get the wrong kind of regulations standing in the way, and if we can make sure that the environmental community realizes the word no isn't an energy policy, we can continue to move in that direction, and I think we can do a lot more. I mean, we were having some conversation with the National Association of Manufacturers. They said because of where natural gas is and the price of natural gas and what's happening with the cost of power generation, they believe that manufacturing will create 1 million jobs over the next 10 years. 1 million new jobs in manufacturing. That would have been unheard of just a few years ago. But that's because a lot of companies that moved offshore, guess what they're realizing? We would rather have cheap, reliable energy than cheap labor. And they're coming back to this country. Are we going to get all the jobs back? No, I'd never stand here and tell you that. Some of those jobs are gone forever. But we are getting some of those jobs back because of the cost of energy. And so to keep our manufacturers competitive, this whole thing, I mean, it's already happening. So I think it's not conceivably going to happen. It's already very much there. 1.3 million new jobs in the oil and gas industry over the next 10 years. So I mean, it's huge.
Earlier you said that this was not a partisan issue.
It is.
It is in North Carolina, believe me.
It's become that way. Yes, it has.
It started out that way.
Yeah.
I was in the House when we argued about whether to frack or not. And guess who was on the not side? The Democrats.
Sure.
And guess who was on the frack side? The Republicans. It has not changed. In fact, it's gotten worse. Now I'm in the Senate. I hear the same thing. Who's arguing against the Democrats? I got a question for you. Why do they want to do that? It seems insane to me.
Why do Democrats want to argue against?
Yeah.
Well, I want to be careful to say that because it's not true. I mean, I go to states all around this country, and every Democrat doesn't oppose energy exploration. Yeah, I understand here in North Carolina. I think it has become a political issue here in North Carolina when it should be more of an issue about energy. How do we get it back to just more of a common sense focus on energy? I'm not quite sure. I mean, you look at the Keystone Pipeline. The Keystone Pipeline makes perfect sense, okay? We've been studying the Keystone Pipeline for 5 years. We've done 5 federal reviews. We've had over 1 million citizens comment on it. And the president still won't approve it. We could create 100,000 jobs right now if Keystone Pipeline was approved, but he won't approve it. And it's not because they don't believe in the economic reality, because they do. Because we meet with these folks. But he won't approve it because it's become a political issue. So the thing that we're trying to do, is make it less about politics and more about the.
But you can't, it's kind of separate.
I think that the key to this is make the issue about affordable energy.
That's right.
Because all the things that they're against, whether it's fracking, whether it's coal, are things that keep our electric prices down. They keep our other energy prices down, our natural gas prices. And by doing that, it also keeps our oil prices down. I saw one study that without fracking, gas would cost us, put in our car, $6 a gallon.
Be a lot higher.
So I mean, that's where we need to refocus the issues on affordable energy, and not just there, the things that these environmental extremists, let's call them what they are, want, the windmills and solar panels. That is very expensive energy.
It is. But again, and I think I was having this conversation with Bill in the back. Bill and I, we got to know each other quite a bit before all this started. At our group, we actually do support an all of the above strategy, because there are some instances where renewable technology makes sense, but there's a lot of instances where it doesn't. And the point that we try to make to the environmental community, when you look at our baseload energy demand right now in the country, 62% of the baseload demand is met through fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. About 3% is met through solar. So to try to totally supplant that is virtually impossible. But where we are seeing solar and things like that work is, for example, Duke Energy is now looking at doing plants that operate on solar during the day and they run on natural gas at night. That actually makes perfect sense in terms of reducing our carbon footprint, but still being able to produce the kind of energy that our manufacturers and our citizens need. So there are some instances where, renewables.
But the solar is still not cost effective, and this whole carbon footprint stuff is nonsense to begin with.
Amen.
Why are we not hearing about nuclear anymore?
Well, and again, we support nuclear, we support all of the above, but it's very tough to have that conversation with a lot of people, because there's a lot of NIMBYism involved in it. Everybody says it's great, but NIMBYism means not in my backyard. Yeah, I want a nuclear plant, I just don't want one in my backyard. So that's the issue with nuclear. Everybody knows that it's nice, clean energy, and quite frankly, we put our sailors on it every day out in these submarines. But when it comes time to actually do a nuclear plant, nobody wants it in their backyard.
With regard to the term fracking, why not just change it to small footprint pressure drilling? It worked for climate change or global warming.
We like to call it shale stimulation, unconventional oil and gas recovery.
Yeah.
We've got a few names for it, but they ain't quite called on like fracking.
It worked for global warming, so I mean, roll on with it.
Yeah, but I think your friend here, he made a really good point. I think that word fracking has become so toxic that people here, they just react to it.
From a jobs perspective, we're looking at the Modernization Act here in North Carolina. What could that initially impact, and is there a target area?
Yeah, well, that's what I was actually getting ready to get into. And I wanted to ask the question before I highlighted the bill. Did you, how familiar are you with the bill that just passed here in the state? You voted for it, okay. Well,
Did you read it?
the folks who are not in the General Assembly, how familiar are you with the bill?
I'm sorry.
The folks who are not in the General Assembly, how familiar are you with the bill? Not at all? Okay. I'll try to hit on some of it.
Can I ask you one quick question before you get into that?
Sure.
Because I want to pick up on Steve's point. When we're talking with these folks about this process, just exactly what percentage of our energy is coming from fracking now in the United States? I mean, what kind of an impact is it having? I know it's having an impact,
Well,
as you pointed out, but
60% of natural gas production right now comes from hydraulic fracking
in this
in this country. 60%. Yeah, so again, hydraulic fracturing is the main reason why we're having the kind of production that we
You're
have.
going to have some hangouts or something with some of the...
Yeah, I do have some handouts that you can grab on the way out of here. It doesn't have that fact in it, but I actually do have, I don't have it with me. We've got another book that we call Shale Answers, and it has it.
If I can get a hold of it.
Oh yeah, anytime you want. And there's information on the back that you can get. This one right here talks about facts here in North Carolina specifically. This talks about how some of the rail bores shielded in case for hydraulic fracturing. And then this gets into a little bit of offshore, which I do want to touch on before I let you guys go. And this is where I got to say, I mean, as I move into the offshore piece, this is where I do have to say that it has been somewhat of a bipartisan effort to get us to where we are right now with offshore energy exploration. So about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Obama administration announced that they're going to open up the Atlantic OCS for exploration. So we have been lobbying, the oil and gas industry has been lobbying the administration forever to try to get the Atlantic OCS opened up for exploration. So exploration meaning that we can actually get out there and do seismic surveys to figure out what's in the Atlantic and what could be recovered. So you won't get drilling companies to be interested in offshore production if they don't really know what's out there. And so the administration had been blocking permits on this for many, many years. They just would not allow it to happen. Now I will say when the president first came into office in 2009, he signaled that he was going to be a supporter of offshore energy. It was one of the first things that he did. And what ended up happening is when we had the big spill, the Deepwater Horizon spill in the Gulf of Mexico, environmentalists in his party went crazy and the president shut down all offshore exploration. So what does that mean? In our country currently, 90% of our offshore resources you can't even touch. 90%. The only place you can do offshore development is in the Gulf, a little bit off the coast of Alaska, and a little bit off the coast of California. But the entire eastern coast is shut down. There's nothing you can do there. Now, in the 90% that's out there that we can't touch, we believe there's about 90 billion barrels of oil in offshore and probably around 450 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. That's preliminary estimates.
So next year.
Through next year. Through the next 100 years. I mean, so again, a few weeks ago, and this happened very quietly. Nobody saw this. The president announced this, when he put out the release, it was 6:05 on a Friday night. That's when the release came out, that they were going to open up the Atlantic for exploration. So this is something that's happening now. What does that mean for the eastern coast, and what does that mean for North Carolina? For the eastern coast, 280,000 jobs if we can explore for oil and gas offshore. North Carolina stands to benefit more than any state up and down the coast. 55,000 of those jobs come here to North Carolina.
Wow.
Somewhere around $26 billion in capital investment, $4 billion in new economic growth, and $4 billion in new tax revenue.
And these are good paying jobs.
And these are good paying jobs, and not only are they good paying jobs, the median wage in the oil and gas industry is around $98,000. And a lot of times, you go into these jobs, you don't even necessarily have to go to Chapel Hill or Duke University. You can take a job training program at your local community college for 6 months or however long, and then you're out there working. The median wage in North Carolina right now is $42,000. There's a huge difference between what you can earn in this industry and what's currently available. I met a gentleman out in the Midwest that just went to work in the oil and gas industry. He's a petroleum engineer. Now that's more of a highly skilled job. You got to go to school for a little while for that. But if you're a petroleum engineer in the oil and gas industry, your entry level wage is $200,000 a year, and you get a $50,000 signing bonus. All right. So it's a big industry. It's a huge industry. So, offshore is where we think, going back, I think you were asking a question about the impact that onshore could have in North Carolina.
Yeah.
To be very honest with you, the impact from onshore is minimal at best. The main areas of where the resource is located is in Lee, Chatham, and not Orange, Lee, Chatham, and what's that? Moore, not Moore. Is it Moore?
More?
Yeah, Moore's right there. Right, not Moore.
Barnett?
Cumberland?
Maybe it's Cumberland. It's Lee, Chatham, and one other, but that's where
They're all on the Cape Fear River.
that's where the bulk of the resource is located. We believe there's some preliminary estimates saying that there could be some resources located up in the Rockingham and Surrey areas. And there's been I heard some talk maybe a month or two ago that there might be some stuff out in Davie County and maybe out in the western part of the state. The problem is because of the moratorium that's existed here in the state, you haven't even been able to do any exploration to figure out what's actually there. So we haven't done any real testing for 30 years in the state. The governor just now, in the last month or so, just said that we're going to start doing some testing on public land to figure out what do we really have. Now, preliminary estimates say that what we have in Lee, Chatham, and that Moore area, the economic value of that is probably around $9 billion. So it's nothing to sneeze at in terms of the resources
I have some
there.
property there.
And they also estimate that we probably have around 2 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Now, if you think about the Marcellus Shale, which is up around Pennsylvania and Ohio, that's the big shale play in our country. They've got about 400 trillion cubic feet. So, you know, the play that we have here is pretty minimal in comparison to some of the other bigger plays around the country. Now, I will say this, Kim, Marcellus Shale, when they first started exploring there, they thought they only had 15 trillion cubic feet. Once they started exploring, they realized they had over 400. So what starts to happen is once you get underground and start exploring, you could figure out that we've got more than we think we have. But right now, we think it's nearly somewhere around 2 trillion. Now, the offshore opportunity in North Carolina, that's the mother lode. That's the big one. You know, that's the one that can literally transform our state.
I think there's an aspect that you may have not heard about, and I would encourage you to investigate it.
Sure.
When I was a little boy,
How long ago was that?
I can tell you, it's before 1978 when they came through.
before 1978, they came through with these big seismic trucks.
Yeah.
They had a plate on the ground, and you could actually feel it vibrate.
Yeah.
And we had a motel in Plymouth. We owned and operated a motel. And not long after these trucks came through, drilling crews came in, and they stayed in the motel, and he stayed for a long time. And they were drilling down around Crestwell and Columbia and so forth. And this,
Just exploring, like test wells?
yep.
Yeah.
And one day they came back all excited and happy, packed up and left. You never heard from them again.
I see.
And there are wells in Terrell County with big pressure gauges on them. And like you said, the footprint is not big at all. But that's it. I mean, they're pressurized.
Yeah.
You can read, I mean, you know, they're active, there's something there. But, you know, that's been 35 years ago and nothing.
Yeah, I was told that the last time we did any real testing here in North Carolina would have been about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what they found or what's there, but,
Yeah.
but I mean, you know, one of the arguments that we've had with the environmental community is that we fight so much, but quite frankly, we don't even know what we're fighting over because we don't really have we haven't done the kind of data collection that we need to know what we're arguing about.
They're not fighting over the environment, they're fighting over the control.
Yeah, and you know, the biggest argument that the environmental community used to have was that we were running out of resource. Well, that's not an argument that you can make any longer because we're not running out. You know, one of the things that I think people are really afraid of is, you know, we might start to export resources again here in this country. But that's not anything to be afraid of either. We can create 350,000 jobs a year if we were exporting resources to other countries in the world.
We already are.
Well, no, we're not exporting oil. No.
Crude, according to.
No, it's a different variation of crude with it. We still have very much an embargo in place to export refined crude.
According to what they were saying on the internet.
No, I know what you're talking about, the tanker ship that went to South Korea, but it was it's a different variation of oil is what they're sending out there. I'm sorry.
Well, it makes you wonder why all of these pipelines were put into eastern North Carolina heading toward the coast. It doesn't seem to me that the population is large enough to afford bringing natural gas or anything in. Are those pipelines put in to take something out?
Yeah, this is the question I think he was asking.
Well, I work with a company that did it. I mean, I started South Carolina line, I worked in Virginia line from 95 to the coast. There's 600 miles of gas pipeline in eastern North Carolina.
I said,
Anywhere from 12 inches to 8 inches, 12-inch steel pipe, 8-inch steel pipe, maybe some 6-inch steel pipe. But
From my understanding, Piedmont Natural Gas put those lines in.
yes. Well, there was another company owned it then, Piedmont, and bought them out since then.
Okay.
But, $400 million and 600 miles of pipeline in eastern North Carolina from the furthest point in the south, Supply, North Carolina, all down in there, all the way to Currituck and under the Scuppernong River and under the Currituck Sound, coming up over to Kitty Hawk. So, I mean, I've worked that company for a good while, sold them a lot of stuff for swamp land, but
Yeah, and let me address what he's saying, because I want y'all to understand, it's sort of like, within the energy industry, there's sort of two different segments, okay? So there's what we call the upstream sort of production part of energy, which is what I'm talking about, the oil and gas production, how do you explore for energy, how do you produce it. But then you have what we call the downstream part of the energy industry, which is how do you actually distribute it. So people like Duke Energy, Piedmont Natural Gas, they're all part of the downstream. So they're figuring out how to get it distributed to consumers and companies and people who use it. The people I work with tend to be more on the upstream side. So your question is a very good one, but I just wouldn't have a clue what Piedmont Natural Gas would be down there.
What he's saying is, they're not selling it.
Well, what I'm saying is, I don't know what they would be doing. That's not even what I do.
what I don't want is us to be dumb, because even if there is anything under our feet, the oil companies don't want us to know. We want to be the last ones to know anything. In eastern North Carolina, there's one individual that's in here buying land and paying $6,000 an acre for it. Well,
He's got it, babe.
I've heard 12, but 6 to 12, 8. But now, this farmland down here, we got some great farmland.
Okay.
But you cannot own it, you cannot farm it and make it pay for itself, paying more than $3,200 an acre for it. So now, what is the guy doing here paying $6 grand an acre? Is he buying what we don't know is under this ground?
Well, whatever, I can tell you this, whatever studies and research that's available, it's actually available to the entire public. You can go to Dana's website and download it. So I mean, but from what I understand and from what I know and from everything I've read, there's not a lot of oil and natural gas from a shale play perspective in eastern North Carolina. I mean, now again, I don't know what Piedmont Natural Gas is doing or why they were running lines or anything like that, but that's what I understand. And then also I'll add, from an offshore perspective, the other thing about offshore, and we're going through this right now with the administration, in order to be able to explore for oil and gas in the offshore territory, you have to be a part of what they call the 5-year leasing plan. So every 5 years they do a leasing plan. If your area is not in the plan, you can't even pull permits there. So the new plan starts in 2017. We've been lobbying the administration to get into the plan. So you wouldn't even see any offshore exploration or no offshore development probably until somewhere in the 2020 area. So I mean, it's still very much far off. So I mean, if somebody's buying land for that, I don't see the connection. But I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say that, just being an average citizen from the outside.
Yes, I know she has.
They put pipelines to Terrell County, gas pipelines to Terrell County. There's 4,100 people birth to grave in Terrell County.
You sure they don't just come through Terrell County?
Well, yeah, but I mean, they're putting,
It ends in Terrell County. Okay.
and
Now I do know.
it would be cost prohibitive to run a pipeline down there for 4,100 people.
Now I do know this. Now I do know that Piedmont Natural Gas and Duke Energy are collaborating to build a pipeline. They're building a pipeline from the Marcellus Shale down to North Carolina, and that's to move in natural gas for power generation. I do know that. I don't know if that's connected to what you're talking about, but I do know that's what's going on. I'm sorry, Bill. Go. I'm sorry.
Bill been cut off.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bill.
Yeah, to the
a question, going back to offshore for a minute.
Yeah.
Down in Wilmington, I've been seeing all these pamphlets that saying that seismic testing in the water will kill hundreds of millions of fish.
Yeah.
What's the appropriate answer to that?
Yeah, so that's, environmentalists will say that when you put these boats out there, you can harm sea mammals. Again, it's just not true. And I actually have a video, we don't have time for it, but there's a video I have that shows you the process of how they do seismic surveys. And I'd be happy to get you a link if you want to see that. The process of doing seismic surveys is so heavily regulated, you actually have to have a federal watcher on the ship with you. If that federal watcher even spots a mammal, you have to shut down all operations. You cannot continue to do testing in the water until all the marine life is clear. So the process is heavily regulated, it's safe, and again, it's just it's another one of those things you hear because people don't want us to move forward. I mean,
Give me an answer, please.
That's part of my question. How do we know what there is out there if we don't explore?
Well, you just gotta have the exploration to figure out what the development opportunity might be. All right, I see y'all winding down. One more last question, and then you got it. Well, let's get her in because she has an answer.
Well, in light of the national security issue, with Russia and China coming together to buy their own oil on the BRICS, using gold instead of the dollar, and then be a direct impact to our energy, or our cost of energy being dependent upon the Arabs to do it. My understanding of making agreements with the Arabs. So we counted, Americans counted the last person left out. So, I mean, it's a security issue since our independence right now. It's still on foreign oil.
It's hugely, it's very much about, and that's a great question, it's very much about our security and our national defense, because if you don't have, and we saw this in the 1970s, if you don't have an energy, if you're not energy secure, it can adversely impact not only your consumers, but your companies, which then impacts the jobs market and so forth. So it's hugely important. The other thing too is that countries like China are starting now to look at hydraulic fracturing. So they're starting to look at getting more into that business. So again, the environmentalists will say, well, we shouldn't do it here in this country. Well, unfortunately, the energy environment operates globally. So if they're doing it, we better figure out a way to compete and do something about it. The Keystone Pipeline, we hit on that a moment ago. Environmentalists will say, no, if we don't build a pipeline, well, the resource doesn't move. Well, that's completely false. Have you guys been hearing about all these rail car fires and explosions that have been happening? You know why that's happening? It's because they're shipping Canadian oil on trains down to America to be refined. So if they can't send it by pipeline, they'll just figure out another way to send it. And I just saw a report over the summer. You know what they're getting ready to start doing? Now they're getting ready to start shipping it on trucks. So not just by rail car, they're going to put this stuff on trucks. So we've got to get this pipeline built so that we're doing this transport in a safe and reliable way. So again, you've got countries like China and other ones that they're protecting their energy future.
They runs that railroad that's transporting it.
Yeah, he does.